Hi there, and welcome back to the Point and Quest podcast, where we deep dive into the pixelated mysteries of point and click adventure games. I'm Lindsay, your guide through the nostalgia soaked landscape of retro gaming and indie innovation. Today's episode, it's a little different. Usually it's just me, my mic, and a lot of overthinking, but today I have company, actual company. So let's set the stage, shall we? It's 1986. You're working as a faceless, nameless risk assessment data processor for a company called Terebro Inc., a name that pretty much screams corporate overlord trying to hide a body in its basement. Your job is to sift through documents and recordings, uncovering secrets about the company's mysterious and, let's say, questionable past. The game is called Things Too Ugly, and it lands somewhere between a psychological thriller, a corporate expose, and a love letter to retro technology. And it's gorgeous. I mean, not in a look at this dazzling sunset kind of way, but in a cozy yet unsettling kind of way. You clock in for your graveyard shift and succumb to the glow of your monitor. The moon hangs like a question mark above the Mississippi just outside your window, a world that seems so far away in this moment. You feel the creak of the corporate machine. You hear the clink of industrial equipment. You can almost smell the stale coffee from the office break room. It's a vibe. But here's the thing about Things Too Ugly. It's not just about uncovering a conspiracy. It's about the little details. The analog tech, the strange sounds, the puzzles that make you question whether you're clever or just stubborn. And we'll get into all of that. But first, let's talk to the mastermind behind it. Today, I have a special guest joining me on the Point and Quest podcast, Kevin Mercer, aka Professor Space Games, the creator of Things Too Ugly. First off, thank you for not only creating this game, but for trusting me with an early look. How does it feel knowing that the game is about to launch into the world?
Uh, well, first, thank you for asking me to join you, and of course, you're welcome. And I'm so glad that you played it and have interest in it. It feels really scary. It's really terrifying. It's like it's close, and it feels like building a game, can take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm one person, so it feels like it takes a long time, and there's a lot of pressure. And of course, I'm very excited to have people play it. But now that it's almost here, it's like this terror set in. But then also kind of acknowledging that these few days while I'm waiting for it to come out, like nothing bad can happen, like there's no reviews, there's no, it's just all sort of possibility, it's all potential, so that's kind of exciting. So just trying to enjoy it day by day.
That's great. That's a good way of looking at it for sure. You learn pretty early on in the game that it's meant to be played in one sitting. The lack of a save feature adds a unique kind of pressure. What led to that decision, and how do you hope players respond to it?
Yeah, well, I hope they respond well, right? But I knew that I needed to build a game that was just a single sitting experience, right? I mean, as I said, I'm one person. I can't make like 100-hour open world epic by myself reasonably. And so I wanted something that was sort of tight and compact and could be done in one sitting. People are busy and they have backlogs. I have the backlog, and I'm super behind on playing games. So I knew that it needed to be like a one-shot kind of deal, but also needed to make sure that the player felt at least a little bit enriched or bettered in some way, or that they had a positive experience in that, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 hour window. So that's kind of what led to that, really, just kind of acknowledging my time and players' time, but trying to build something of quality. It was an appropriate scope.
I was pretty nervous when I saw that there was no save option, because I'm like, oh no, like I save after every little thing that I do. So that was, but it really did kind of add to you're clocking in for like a shift, sort of like work focus mentality as well. So it was kind of cool in that respect. And yes, it should be played in one sitting, and I totally get your reasoning for that. So I have to ask, the 1980s, corporate America, the Mississippi River, the night shift, that's all a very specific setting. What inspired that particular setting in the game?
Yeah, well, I'll start with place. So I kind of grew up in the Midwest and in the southern United States as well, but in the Midwestern U.S. is where I like really spent a lot of my childhood. So I've got a connection to that place. It's special to me. It's important. And I don't think there's a whole lot of media set in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sort of rural landscapes get kind of overlooked in storytelling in a lot of ways. So that was important to me. The 80s, well, the story kind of spans. I mean, you're a player sitting there in 1986
Right.
at your computer terminal, but we're looking back at a story that's like 1959 up to 1986. So it kind of spans decades. So I wanted to bookend this whole like company history that you're looking at in like, you know, in the Cold War, mid-century sci-fi, you know, nuclear anxieties. But then sort of the end of the Cold War in the mid to late 80s, kind of using those as like bookends to this like this time period where scientific advancements are largely made in secret. We're very concerned about who knows what and where, and trade secrets are important. And, you know, state secrets are kept under guard. So that was kind of the thinking there. And then what else did you ask me? Oh yeah, kind of corporate. Yeah, so just rampant capitalism.
Yeah.
1980s, you know, yeah, everybody's dream is to work in an office and climb the ladder and make a lot of money. So it just seemed to fit there somewhat naturally.
I really liked and I'm going to try to avoid like heavy spoilers as much as I can, but you do learn in the game that there's an ecological horror element to it, if you can call it that. So you kind of already elaborated on how environmental concerns are like woven into the plot and like the secrecy and the corporate America. Is there a certain message that you hope players take away from this?
Yeah, I think just like treat the environment better, largely. But more specifically, I mean, it has to do with water for me. You know, I live in an area where, like, if I wanted to go catch a fish and eat it, I've been told to limit that to like one per week or something, right? Because of the forever chemicals and heavy metals and things like that. And a lot of that is a byproduct of strip mining for coal, which is huge in the Midwest and a lot of parts of the country. But so really, I think it has to do with respecting waterways first. That's kind of the most pointed ecological message, and that, you know, these economies that depend on fossil fuels, let's say, that are at this weird tipping point where we're trying to like lean renewable, but that's hard. That's like really hard to do. And these kinds of changes, these sort of like systemic issues, they're complicated and they take time, and right, and communities are sort of at stake. In the Midwest, there are communities where perhaps there was a big coal mine, let's say, but those don't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they have a lifespan of, let's say, 25, 30 years, something like that. And I'm not a geologist, but just to say for an example, right? But once that's done, where does those jobs go then, right? In a community, a small rural community. Those are the things I think about. They're not super pointed or spelled out in the game that way, but there are references to these things throughout the game.
Yeah, I noticed a postcard, which I appreciated. It was the actual indigenous place names and kind of like a land acknowledgement, which you don't see enough today, let alone like, back in the 80s or whatnot. But I really enjoyed just seeing the actual indigenous like place names. And then there's the audio design, which I thought was really unique. I loved it. It felt very subtle, like your surrounding felt very real and almost tactile. I like the different radio options. Personally, Father Floodplain is probably what I would have on in the background most of the time, the Crow song. How did you approach creating this audio experience?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it's like mostly optional, right? You don't have to listen to any music when you play the game, and some of it's kind of hidden anyway. So, like, there are a few songs that get played no matter what. Like at the beginning of the game and the end of the game, like there's some music. But most of the soundtrack is like on the radio, and it's totally optional. So that's like kind of a risk, or I felt like it was a little bit risky. because when I've taken it places to like exhibit, sometimes people won't touch the radio and they're just sitting there silently, and it's like a little bit, a little awkward. And I think like, is this boring? There's no sound. But I think that, sort of that approach I think is good, right? It feels a little bit real and immersive. If you sit there quietly long enough, you can hear like some subtle buzzing, like electrical buzzing overhead. But yeah, so like thinking about the radio stations, I knew I needed like some variety, but again, I'm one person. I'm not a musician first, I can say that. So I tried to brand them as like there's this experimental like live radio program that's Father Floodplain and the Midnight Communion, and so that's sort of like kind of reverent of the land and has these like electronic organs and things in there, and so it sounds a little bit like it would be at home in a cathedral or something, but then also uses a lot of sampling from nature. So you mentioned crow song. That's got audio of crows at my home outside, so I'm like,
oh, cool. Very cool.
there's frogs that show up, some of the audio, so like things like that. And then homemade instruments, so like most of that radio station uses like, I'm like banging wooden spoons together and like pots and pans and things. So that's one whole radio station, and another's all electronic, and it's multiple bands, and there are really no lyrics at all in any of the music. And then a newer addition was a third music station that plays kind of acoustic and electronic stuff, and it's sort of sleepy and I don't know, contemplative maybe. But yeah, so I just wanted like variety, no lyrics really to deal with. I didn't want to bring like more meaning through lyrics.
Yeah, that would have made it hard for the puzzles too, I bet. Like, I mean, there were times where I was like, nope, can't listen to any of this. I need to think. Like, so.
Right. Yeah, well, there's one the DJ on the radio who I've watched people like listen to her thinking that she might have a clue or something.
Oh.
Right, so like I had to be a little bit careful there. So that's kind of how I approached it, right? Just like a lot of play, just having fun, and like organizing music and seeing what worked.
Well, it was really cool. It was a really cool feature. I enjoyed that a lot. So I also have to ask about the puzzles. As a point-and-click adventure gamer, first and foremost, I'm legally obligated. So some of them had me questioning myself a little bit, but what is your philosophy in designing and creating a good puzzle? One that's like challenging but fair?
That is so tough. It is like really difficult to make good puzzles. So I think that there's a few qualities that are important to me. One is that it should be challenging but fair, right? I had a friend who said that good puzzles, so this is not me, this is a friend, I didn't say this, but it's really good, it's genius. He said that good puzzles make you feel smarter for having solved them. Like they make you feel like totally empowered.
Yes.
How do you do that? For me, it became about triangulating the correct answers. So it's too easy and it's not satisfying to just go read the answer off of a document. I feel like you have to take that answer and then process it in some way through some other document, or some piecing together of multiple components into one answer, so that you've like processed it a little bit. So like you've massaged it into the correct answer. That was important. And then I think rewarding wrong answers occasionally is really fun. So there are some Easter eggs in like the GPS, for instance. So like if you enter certain things into the GPS, they might be wrong, but you still get somewhat of a reward for having put those in. So they don't get you to the right answer, but they give you some other, like kind of an enriched experience. So, or at least a chuckle, I don't know. And then like pacing those puzzles is really difficult. So like by the end of the game, and again, to avoid spoilers, but like by the end of the game, it can't like overstay its welcome. Like that last file folder needs to go ahead and wrap up, right? So like that's the thing. So like I have a spreadsheet of like all of the puzzles in the folders, and they're given like a difficulty.
Okay.
Like so like puzzle 1 is of a certain difficulty, and by the time you get to so it's like there are spikes, or I tried to have spikes in the difficulty. throughout the game. So yeah, that's kind of how I approach it. Right? Are they fun? Do you feel rewarded? Did you have to work at it a little bit? And I can't say that they all work, but like, it's a challenge. It's like a puzzle itself.
Yeah, I bet. That's an interesting way of putting it for sure. I definitely got stumped in some segments to the point where I had to call my wife in and be like, can you help me with this little bit? And so we tried to solve it, and then we were like, oh, like we're just dumb, like we're just not reading this correctly. But yeah, then we did feel like satisfied after finding it. It does make you feel, like you said, or your friend said, smarter having solved it, and not in a way that it's like, some weird like Sierra nonsensical puzzle, which I love too because I grew up on those games. But they're actually logical puzzles. So you brought up the GPS. Players interact with devices like GPS and encoders that are very reminiscent of the time. What challenges did you face in integrating these retro technologies into the gameplay? And how did you ensure they felt authentic yet engaging for maybe like younger players who never actually like interacted with them?
Yeah, so that's a big one. So like when I exhibit this at like conferences and things, um, oftentimes younger players, when they pick up the radio, for instance, right, they're like unsure how to turn it on, like the needle moving across the screen and the dials and things like that. And so that was a challenge. So early on, that radio had like a dedicated power button,
Okay.
which is not accurate. Like that's not technically how it works. It's the dial, of course. You turn all the way down until it clicks or turn it up. And so I would have people that, like older players, would say like that's not right, and younger players would instantly know how to turn on the radio. So I had to make a decision, like, do I want it to be accurate, and then hope that people that have not operated a radio of that style will figure it out. So like that's a consideration. The GPS is totally reimagined. Like there wasn't a GPS that operated that way. It still doesn't, but I wanted to be able to reference locations, beyond that little office. So I referenced an old navigation system from Cars from the 80s. So
Okay.
I didn't know that these existed until I started doing this, but and it was a black and green screen like the one in the game, and they were just really simple. And I think they ran off of like a cassette tape, had like data, and so it was like an early GPS. I think it was called an ETAC or something.
Oh, interesting.
And they're super cool. They look very cyberpunk, because they're like a little screen in the dash of like an 80s car, black and green, and kind of almost like vector graphics looking.
Okay. Very
old
like
Vectrex,
Pip Boy-esque. Like
yeah. Very like a Pip Boy in like there, and like I can't remember the early car, like a Mercedes. I don't know.
Okay.
Probably higher end. But anyway, so like kind of cool, cyberpunk, and so I wanted to use that. But then, I thought it might be too tedious to enter all of the coordinates. So I just pared it down to just like a 4-digit code.
Yeah, that was appreciated for sure.
So I'm glad. So, so kind of simplifying where I had to, and then figuring like, how much UI does it need? That's like a big question too. So the radio, like, I want to show people that like there's an AM FM switch, which again, generationally, that may not everybody understands that right away. So, so balancing UI with just like directly engaging with a physical object. And that was another consideration. But a lot of fun, right? And it's like the GPS gave me an opportunity to like reimagine something or look back at 1986, but then like move that needle forward.
Yeah.
Kind of this like retro futuristic sort of take on it. Like a Pip-Boy, right? Like you're saying, didn't really exist that way, but kind of could have. It's like plausible, but yeah.
Yeah, it was very cool. Retro tech is coming back. My 13-year-old cousin like has a cassette player, and she thinks it's the coolest thing ever. And it's like those were the worst form of like music, but okay, like those were so hard.
It's like vinyl was reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like a classic, but cassettes were frustrating. But
I've thought about putting the soundtrack for the game on it.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, retro tech's coming back, and I definitely appreciated like all the retro aesthetics, like The Office. Like, I know it probably wasn't meant to feel cozy, but it kind of did because you're like there at night, the moon is like looming in the background. You're there with your like probably stale cup of office coffee and like fax machine somewhere in the background, and it's just like a very like lulled, quiet experience. So in a way, it was like, I know cozy gets thrown around in games a lot, but I felt very like cozy in that atmosphere.
It's
There.
interesting. Yeah, that's interesting because I there are times I play it and because it's kind of lamplight, it does feel cozy. But um, there are those heavy black bars on the back wall that are meant to be like prison bars in a way. But like, so I'm comforted by the
But
office.
the prison bar, maybe that says something more about me and my, I don't know, but that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't even notice the prison bars. I was just like, oh, the moon is pretty, like out there. Like, that's, um, okay. So I have a few other just like kind of fun questions. If you were working at the night shift at Terry Bro Inc., what's one item you'd bring with you that you could, so you'd make it through your shift? Like, what's the one item?
Yeah, probably the. Well, let's see. When did the Game Boy come out? The big gray, the DMG 101,
Okay, okay, I'm not sure.
that Game Boy. I don't know when that came out. I should, but like I feel like it might be like 1988, so we'd be two. But I would have whatever in the Things Too Ugly verse, whatever handheld Game Boy type thing exists there. That's what I would have. What
Um,
about you? What would you take if you had to work at Cerebro?
cool. Yeah, you definitely probably need that for some of the monotony, but um, I'd probably bring probably just like a thermos of good coffee. Like that's the most meaningful. Like I have to have like good coffee everywhere. So, um,
It's important.
yeah.
It reminds me too of a job I had a long time ago. There was like a cabinet, and it was just communal office mugs. Like it was like where everybody and they just grab whatever
Okay.
mug. Like so, like that was kind of in the game too. The little with the geese on it.
Oh,
It's like
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
whatever bad coffee in your communal mug kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I have one last question. What do you hope players walk away with after playing Things Too Ugly, aside from maybe like a slight paranoia about their current office job?
hmm hmm. I would hope that people would leave the game being able to acknowledge that just because it's the way we've always done it doesn't matter, um, or that just because it's important to your boss it doesn't have to be important to you necessarily. um,
Yeah, so let's talk about that. The supervisor kind of gets us into this like shifty situation. Like, and I can cut this out if it's spoilers, but I was just like, no, no man, I'm doing my work. I'm doing my work. I don't need to like entertain your, you're clocking in for a shift.
is that how you felt?
Yeah, that's how I felt. I was like, okay, I don't know you. I've never seen you. I've never spoken with you. I don't want to do your dirty work. I'm obviously getting paid like decent money and or I'm in this job for a reason, unbeknownst to me, my character lore. But I'm just like, I don't drag me into this. Sort of
Interesting. So
sort
you
of
would rather the supervisor just like you go, like let me just do my work.
That's probably the minority though. It would be interesting to like play then as the supervisor or something because it is interesting like figuring stuff out, but I was just like, dude, and then like the end, I don't think I chose like the right ending, but yeah.
Well, okay, so assuming assuming that people are listening to this particular episode, it's because they want to know. So like I'm okay talking more deeply about things that are a little bit
Okay.
spoilery if you'd like.
Okay,
It's up to
yeah.
you, right? And what you think your audience wants. But like, I mean, if you're here listening to this, I don't know. I guess you want to know, right?
I'll put a little warning in. Yeah.
Okay,
In
sure,
post.
yeah.
You heard that right. There are spoilers ahead. So if you would like to play the game before, which you really should, I would recommend stopping the podcast and playing the game and then come back to us.
So So then, yeah, what ending then did you, or what was the ending you experienced?
Oh, I let the creature out. I was like, this is obviously the only ending I thought, but it wasn't. um,
Who knows? Yeah, so you let the creature out. Okay, so then, yeah, so then you, I guess, didn't then like cooperate with the supervisor in the way that they wanted you to.
no, I guess I didn't. Yeah, I guess I didn't.
So then, I don't know, how'd that make you feel about um, you yourself or the character? Like, what does that mean for you?
I mean, I don't know that we should have been like exploiting this creature to begin with. So like if I had the power to like let it back out, it didn't seem to like in my mind, in my game canon, it wasn't really doing harm before like Terry Bro came in and wanted to like exploit it for like their own uses. So I say just like leave the creatures alone. So I think that was my sentiment. I didn't even realize that there could possibly be a different ending until like the little Steam thing popped up, and I was like, oh. But it's very interesting, like the limited number of case files, and like this is a huge company. There could be like other cases. So do you think you'll make other like games down the road that are like kind of in the same universe?
I'm definitely interested in like expanding the. It would all take place in the same like universe. The whole game world would be the same. Um, but I think that what I'm interested in is like more short games like this one, first person puzzle in the workplace during the night shift, but different workplaces, like in different sort of like still in the Midwest, but like in all having some quality of science fiction or horror or fantasy or occult or
Okay.
so I would like to sort of expand it that way, but they wouldn't depend on one another necessarily, like things that could be played in any order, just an anthology, right, that could be taken in any order, where puzzles are still important, the narrative is the focus, and says something about like labor, like labor and kind of just trying to make do, just sort of trying to get through it all. Um, yeah, down the line at some point. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, as a huge X-File fan, that's kind of what I was like kind of thinking like, oh, this is like solving an X-File. At least one of them. Uh, that's all the questions I've like prepared, unless you want to talk about something like.
I'm curious to hear more about like sort of your experience with it. Um, and like I meet people that they play it and they sit down and they play demo and then they leave and then I don't ever get to follow up with them. So you've played the whole game and you've had some time since then. Like I don't know, is there anything left that you want to ask or talk about or?
I liked the story that the game told. I appreciate. Although I would have wished probably for a save feature, just because, like I just always get up and do something or cook dinner in the middle of something. I understand why that was omitted. I I had started watching a demo of this a little while ago because you had released that
Last spring, I guess.
last spring,
The
and I
demo went live. Yeah.
I felt like some people were like a bit frustrated in some of the puzzles with the demo, but I felt like if they were to keep at it, they'd like reach those like satisfying puzzles and like get the hang of it sort of situation, because that's the experience that I felt. I thought it was very kind of clever that there were like little clues that you could solve. I'll take out my like Zodiac Killer notebook. This is the first game that I've taken notes for in a while too. Like, yeah, I think it's like I very rarely take notes for games anymore, but like, yeah, having to decode everything, and like there were like little scraps of paper that you could decode that I didn't see like they were just like a training. I think that's what they were meant for, because I don't think they served another purpose in game unless I totally missed that segment. But I thought that was kind of cleverly done, and I love clicking on everything. I love clicking on everything, and like it has some sort of story or like something about it, even if it's just like world building or character building or something. So I'm a huge fan of games like Gone Home, so I really love that like element of it.
It's great. It's
Yeah.
great. Well, I really appreciate hearing that. Yeah, and thank you so much for playing it and taking the time to like really engage with it. I appreciate that so much.
Oh no, thank you for trusting me with the first look. And like I was gonna play this game anyway, so I was excited when you reached out. So that was very very cool for me. I'll probably play again just to get the other like Steam achievements and other
Oh yeah,
ending.
yeah, yeah. Do you know how many you're missing?
Oh gosh, I think I'm 2 or 3 short, so I must have missed some of the like the little Easter eggs.
Yeah. Okay.
But I've got to go back to get those because completionist. So, all right, here's a question that I have that I'm just going to start answering like any and all guests, if I have any more on the Point and Quest podcast. Um, if you could live inside any adventure game world, which one would it be, and what would your role be in that world? I'm just assuming you're a fan of adventure games, maybe.
I mean, yeah. I mean, all kinds of games, really. I'm thinking maybe like I would go into the world of maybe like I'm thinking of stories untold or observation,
Okay.
something super sci-fi, and then maybe I would do something with spaceships or space shuttles, like or space stations
Okay. Very
in
cool.
observation. Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Yeah. Gosh, everywhere. Instagram and Blue Sky lately. That's the rest of the world. Right? But yeah, just at Professor Space Games everywhere. Here I can reference my actual. I've got it all my notes ready. Right?
Oh, yay.
At Professor Space Games on everything: Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, um, and Discord through the Steam page too.
Okay,
So there's a link to Discord. So yeah.
And Things Too Ugly launches January 16th.
That's
So,
right. Yeah, yeah. And I'm working on getting finalized the digital sort of art book and companion that really expands on the whole world.
that's cool.
And like, yeah, yeah. So like all of the world building and stuff. So pretty much everything that you see in the game gets explained beyond the office through the book.
Oh, that's cool. I love
So
stuff
more
like
context.
that. Very cool.
Yeah.
And this is available on all platforms, right? It's available
That's right.
on
Yeah.
Switch, on Steam Deck, on Steam, on all the other PlayStation.
Yeah. Xbox, PlayStation, yeah, and PC. So.
Very cool. So people can check it out with whatever device they have, which is always appreciated. So very cool. Well, do you have anything else or?
No, other than just thank you for having me. It was really wonderful to join you, and thanks for talking with me about my game.
Oh, I really enjoyed myself. Thank you so much, and thanks for letting me play it early. I really enjoyed that.
Of course, yeah.
Well, take care. Thanks so much for coming on.
Of course.
And that wraps up our chat with Kevin Mercer, the creator of Things Too Ugly. The game is out now and it is available on all platforms. And trust me, it's not just something you play, it's something you feel. Imagine clocking in for a job that pulls you deeper into the shadows of corporate secrets, armed with nothing but retro tech and your wits. It's haunting, it's clever, and it's unlike anything else. So grab your decoder, dim the lights, and get ready to face the eerie world of Things Too Ugly. Because sometimes the ugliest truths are the ones you can't look away from.